All right. Hi, everyone. As Christian said, my name is Jay Wilson. I'm the game director on Diablo 3, and it's Josh Mascara, who's a lead designer on the console for Diablo 3. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about our in-game for Diablo 3 and some of the features and just general design philosophy that we have towards those systems. So in Diablo 2 and the original Diablo, a lot of the focus for the in-game was extending the past normal difficulty with new difficulty settings. So you'd finish normal difficulty and then you'd move on to, go ahead, going forward. So the normal difficulty was basically the core kind of gameplay experience. It was basically what you call the single player game, although they were always co-op enabled. And once you finish normal difficulty, you unlock the next difficulty, which was Nightmare. So, and that provided, greater challenges and new monsters and new items and things like, well, not new monsters, but more challenging monsters and new items and things like that. And then after Nightmare, you unlocked Hell. So Hell was even further, more dangerous, as you can see. There's a ton of monsters chasing you. It's scary. And, made the game even more challenging, but the quality of the items got better, and you got to level up even further. And we're keeping all these kind of similar conventions for Diablo 3. You can have the same kind of level from normal to Nightmare to Hell, but one of the things that we've done is add a new difficulty setting, which is Inferno. So the basic idea is that in Diablo 2, the focus of the difficulty progression was you kind of leveled up through each difficulty, and by the end, you really out-leveled a lot of the kind of normal difficulty, the Hell difficulty stuff. And we wanted to create another one, difficulty setting that was basically maximum level. You get to max level, and this entire difficulty setting is basically customized for you. So, as I mentioned, this is kind of a max level difficulty. So, the player's maximum level in Diablo 3 is level 60, so the basic monsters that you face in Inferno are all at least level 61. So essentially what this allows us to do is it takes the entire game and kind of flattens it. It says all the content is available at the maximum level and makes the whole game kind of challenging and creates an even greater challenge than players have experienced in the previous games. And the nice thing is that that once you come into this kind of level, you're never basically going to out-level. Since the player's level can never exceed the level of the even most mundane monsters in this difficulty, it's always going to be a viable place to go and find a challenge with how much power your character gets. All right, and the nice thing about Inferno is that because it's higher difficulty, it has new sets of items that drop specifically in those areas. We've done a lot of cool kind of item stuff with each of the difficulties, but before we get to that, I'll talk about monster progression. So with each difficulty, we change several things. And the first one is we change how monsters interact with you. So the monsters become harder. And what does that mean? Well, we raise their level, and by raising their level, that essentially changes all kinds of attributes on those monsters. So, for example, if a monster is fire resistant, they're more fire resistant at a higher level. Their health increases, their damage increases, their speed, movement speed increases. And in general, they become more aggressive. So we have several attributes that kind of control how often monsters attack and how quickly they will pursue you. And all of those things kind of universally decrease as you go into the higher difficulties. And then the last thing we do is we have a lot of monsters that are kind of randomly generated bosses and several powers that can appear on them. And as you go into the higher difficulties, the number of powers that appear in them increases, and we also have some powers that are unique to the higher difficulty levels. Alright, so the next thing we do is focus a lot on items. Now in Diablo 2, when you got to the higher difficulty, you got better items, but they actually used the same art that you saw in normal difficulty. So one of the things we've done in Diablo 3 is that every difficulty essentially has its own items. So here we see the first one's a shot of kind of a mid-normal difficulty wizard. The second shot is nightmare difficulty. And the last one is, I think that one's a late hell difficulty. So And this is true for all the classes. Every class kind of gets unique armor looks and unique items as they level up through the entire game. So that's definitely a max level Demon Hunter. So this is the Monk. That's our normal difficulty. Early Nightmare and Inferno. So as you can see, the visual progression really extends far beyond just kind of a normal playthrough. It gives players something, a reason to continue to level up past normal difficulty. So one of the other things we also focus on is the artisans. So we announced artisans last year, which is essentially crafting. And you can have a variety of different artisans, and each one does some kind of crafting or item enhancement. They have kind of a cart area that you see, you visit them, and as you continue to progress through the game, you'll level those things up. And there are several kind of visual levels of the artisans that are only available in the higher difficulties. So here we have kind of examples of the blacksmith. This one is the, it's the jeweler. Yeah, it's the jeweler. And then the last one is the mystic. So these are some examples of also some in-game items. We have a suit of armor, the one with the orange lettering. That's a unique item, which means it's been handcrafted by the design team. So the attributes on it are always the same attributes, but the ranges of them can still randomize to have a lower or better quality. And then the other one is a rare item. So rare items are completely randomly generated. The way we kind of tune the game is that rare items are the best items in the game, but the hardest to get, because getting a really perfectly rolled rare item is a lot harder than getting, say, a unique item that has got good stats on it, because we can't do unique items. So the next thing we talk about is runes. So one of the things that we focused on to extend past normal difficulty as the primary way that you enhance your skills is runes. So the first kind of 2 level of runes are available in normal difficulty, and they let you do a lot of kind of customizing of your skills. But as you get higher into higher difficulties, you'll unlock higher ranks. And each higher rank essentially powers up what that rune does for you. If the rune, say, takes your magic missile spell and splits it into 2 projectiles at rank 1, it splits it into 8 projectiles at rank 7. So, and we've also got gems as a major element of in-game progression. Now, gems are not actually difficulty restricted, but we only drop, say, about the first 5 tiers of gems as item drops, and you have to combine them to get to the higher tiers. So it actually takes an enormous amount of gems to get to kind of the highest quality gems in the game. So we don't really expect people to be doing that until they're well into the in-game and continuing to essentially evolve their gems for a long time after they've reached max level. So and this shot is just kind of an example of the difference between a level 1 character with no items and a level 60 character. So you see we start with 10 attack and 9 precision, and we end up with numbers in the high hundreds. This is also a really good shot to kind of show how vastly the numbers can differ depending on how you customize your character. So in this case, there's over 700 vitality, but under 300 precision. So this is somebody who's focused very heavily on a very defensive build and not a lot on crit, say a crit focus. So every character can really be built very differently from one another. So to kind of compare and contrast Diablo 2 in-game from Diablo 3. Diablo 2, the item rewards, as I mentioned, were recycled, so the visuals didn't improve. The hero's max level was 99, which was a lot higher, but the problem is that there wasn't enough content to actually cater to that number of levels, because the highest level monster was 85. So you just leveled right past the content, and essentially items and skill points and everything that you got became fairly meaningless. There was a lot of repetitive runs. There was a very small amount of content that was actually viable, and also a very small amount of content that was the most efficient, which was not really the best of situations. And there wasn't really any room to grow the systems. And the development team really didn't design the systems to be grown past kind of full release. So one of the things we focused on with Diablo 3 is solving and improving a lot of these issues. So item rewards are unique per difficulty, so as we mentioned, they have unique visual elements. We capped the player at 60, so that we had some room to grow. Now we might extend levels, but even if we don't, that provides us is the ability to provide content that is equivalent to the amount of levels that the player actually has. So as I mentioned, max level for monsters is level 61, so there's always a challenge. No matter how much power you gain, there's always a fight to be had that's worth having. So there's also, Inferno makes essentially the entire game viable for in-game content. So the need to do repetitive kind of runs in the same area is a lot lower because there's a whole bunch of content that you can visit. And that's one of the things in the future that we're going to continue to look at, is if we still see people targeting specific areas for efficiency's sake, then we will likely go in and add systems that reward the player for playing a broad diversity of content, which just keeps the game interesting for longer. And we've really designed all these systems to allow us to have kind of room to grow and continue to extend the game for years after release. And the last thing I wanted to mention is we have this cool 3D art that we got done for us. That's the address, I assume. So if you want to go take a look at it, it's really neat. There you go.